What's up, guys, and welcome back to All Time Performance, where we're going to start this series on this Mustang, and this is going to be part 2 of the Mustang. And I realized in the last video I kind of skipped some stuff, and that was not on purpose. That was because my mic actually died halfway through the filming and I didn't realize it. So a lot of the film that I filmed for it was pretty much no audio. So just to recap, we've wiped this whole top of this hood, and Chris has kind of pointed something out to me on not understanding what the deal is with why we wipe them all with Bondo. Some people think that it's a, how do I say it? It's a bad thing, like it's gonna crack off later on. That is a very big misconception on Bondo. Just because we've coated this whole panel with Bondo doesn't mean that it's thick. We're pretty much going to be sanding most of this off anyways, so it's really not going to be thick. It's only going to be probably about a fingernail's thickness in most of the whole spots. Some spots won't even be Bondo, it'll be bare metal. The reason we do this is because when a panel is really wavy, you have to do this. There's no other way of straightening the car. You can't sit here and try to metal work it, because if you try to metal work it, you're either going to burn through the metal or cause low spots in the metal. It just doesn't work trying to do straight metal work. There are some guys out there that do some really good metal fabrication, but almost everybody uses Bondo, all the way down from Can Dig It to Chip Foose. Anybody that you can name in the car industry is using Bondo on cars. And we do this so we can get the panels completely flat and get them ready for whatever color we decide on. And some colors are a little bit more pickier than others. Like if you're doing a white, you can get away with some stuff. But if you're going straight black, black shows everything. So you have to really block these cars out. And what we're actually going to talk about today is what is the proper way to repair a dent. And I showed y'all wiping this hood, but I didn't really show y'all on what is the wrong and the right way to repairing a big massive dent. And it just so happens in this fender right here that I will show y'all here in a minute that we have a small dent in it and it needs to be pulled out. And I'm going to show y'all a couple different ways to actually get this dent out. There are ways that you actually will need more tools to repair it, or you can take a hammer and back it out of the back of it and hit it forward. So right now, guys, we're going to spin the camera around. I'm going to bring y'all down with me right here, and we're going to get set up. Stay tuned. All right, guys, so now that we're down eye level to this dent, I'm trying to get y'all the best angle so y'all can actually see what I'm doing. But this is the dent that we're talking about. And the first thing we're going to talk about is actually the incorrect way of repairing this. And you will see this in a lot of some shops. Some of your lower end shops tend to repair cars like this, especially some of your new ones that we call it caving and paving. It's not the proper way of repairing a car. And for me, being in this industry, I'm also like a QA guy, so I have to make sure that everything that comes over to the paint shop is repaired properly and we don't have too much thick mud. So the ways that you can repair this, there's several different ways. If you've got enough room to get up underneath it, like I do my hand right here, you can actually take a hammer and beat it out. And we actually might try that at first. This metal is a lot thicker than your newer cars. This was back when they were actually making cars out of steel instead of their thin aluminum and stuff like that. So we actually have 2 dents here, and you can really only probably see about one. We've actually got a couple dents in it, but there's actually a dent here and our bigger dent here, and there's actually a slide mark right here where it's like almost like a gash where whatever this fender came off of, maybe it hit and slid across, like something like that. But other than that, this fender's actually in pretty good shape. It's got some emblem holes here, and the door's in really bad shape, but we're still working on that. I had some issues with this door, but we do have a door skin. I'm just deciding on if I can save this door and not have to use a door skin. We'll go from there. But some of the tools that you're going to need for this job, we're going to go from tools that are very that not most people have in their household or in their garage, to tools that you can find in your dad's toolbox, or if you've got a hammer or something like that. So to start it off, you'll definitely need a grinder, and we talked about this in part one. This is my grinder, and you can get these pads at O'Reilly's. These are abrasive pads, but they're not abrasive to like the metal. So all they do is actually just clean the paint material off of it. Because you have to realize when you're using like a, let's just say a 40 grit sandpaper on this, you're actually taking metal off of this panel. And you don't want to do that because you'll actually weaken the spot, and it actually can cause like an oil can, and you can also heat up the spot and cause it to warp. So you want to use something that's going to stay cool to the panel and not warp the panel. And these pads are really good. These are just paint pads that are abrasive, and you can get them. These are called True Power Paint Remover Disc, and that's pretty much what they are. They're paint removers. They don't actually affect the metal any. You will see some slash marks and grind marks in the panel when I do start to grind on it, but it's not actually physically hurting the metal. Next tool is a simple one. It's a hammer, and you can use any hammer really. You can get body hammers at Harbor Freight for fairly cheap. You can get them in singles, or you can get them in whole kits, and it comes with a block, which in part one I know I was talking about. This is a steel block, and this is a round-headed steel block. So this one's actually got a concave to it, which actually matches some of these panels. Like if you're talking about hammering right here from the inside, it matches the panel. And pretty much that just makes it a lot easier to try to get like a dent out of a roll or something like that. They make flat blocks, and you can use pretty much every angle of this thing. I mean, you can literally put it like this and hammer on the backside to roll a lip. So these are your like common tools that most people are going to have at their house, and these are going to be probably the most easiest way to fix this dent, and that's just reaching up in the top right here and actually banging the dent out. But you do have your more advanced tools that we use in the body shop, and this is just a similar form of it. But this is actually what we call a stud gun, and you can get these at Harbor Freight. They are very costly. I want to say they're $300-400 bucks just for the stud gun. And what this pretty much does is it has an electrode end on it that you can see that's like a plunger style. And you'll have to also get a set of these. And all these they're the studs for the gun pretty much. So you have a stud gun, and then you have the studs, and they're made out of, I think, copper and some other metals. But I'll get y'all a close-up of that. It's got a little end on the end of it. And I'll try to use this on some of the dent just to show y'all how it works. You can also use this tool for other things, but pretty much all you're gonna do, you slide it in the end, push it where you want it, pull the trigger, it welds the stud to the panel, and then you can actually pull the stud to get the metal out. And that's where one of these come in. This is a slide hammer for a pin. Your pin goes in, it locks onto it, and then you can sit here and actually pull your dent out with the slide hammer. These are your more advanced tools, and they do work really good if you are trying to pull dents. You just got to be careful because the stud gun does actually, I'm going to put that back up so I don't lose it. The stud gun does actually heat the panel up, and I'll show y'all how it heats it up. But it's also used for other things other than just putting studs in panels. So let's just say on this panel right here, if I pull this dent out and it's real oil canny, and when I say oil canny, like if you take a Coke can and you crush that Coke can and then you figure out how to blow it back up to where it's like it's original, well, that Coke can is so stretched and crinkled that it has now caused it to be real fragile, where you can actually push on it and it goes bloop, 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 bloop. It bounces in and out. That's the same effect for these dents when you pull them out. And I don't know if this one will do it. Some of your newer cars do it quite a bit, but this being a lot thicker metal, it doesn't really, it'll oil can, but it don't do it as much as newer cars. So what we do for oil canning is we actually shrink the metal, and there's several ways you can shrink the metal. One of the ways is you can actually use a hammer. This is a shrinking hammer. We use these in the body shops on some panels. They're not really ideal for shrinking. They work on these thicker panels just because these thicker panels can take a lot more banging to them. But pretty much all you would do is you'd take the pick side of it, you'd put you a rigid block on the back side of it, and you would start just kind of bouncing it around the edges of your oil can. And pretty much all you're doing is you're shrinking that area around the dent and where it's oil canning real bad. The other way is you can actually use the stud gun just for a heater. And this tip does get very, very hot. I've burnt myself several times on the studs. You put the studs in, don't ever try to grab them and make sure they're in there. They're in there, and they'll also burn your fingers off. So if I was wanting to shrink this panel, I would just take the stud gun without a stud in it, stick it to the panel, and pull the trigger for a few seconds, and then take a cold rag and put it on there. And what that does is that's speeding up the molecular parts of this panel, and then you're gonna cool it down real fast. And it's kind of like if you've ever watched like Forged in Fire, when the guys are heat sinking the knives to make them more rigid. It's the same process. You're just adding the rigid part of this back into it. So guys, right now what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna try to beat this from the outside, or inside, sorry, and see how much we can get out on this dent. And if all fails, we'll switch to putting a stud gun on it. Stay tuned. All right guys, so all I've got is this round block. It'll work for what I need, because all I'm trying to do is just make sure I don't hit the metal out too far. So you just want to put your round block against it. And this is probably going to be loud. I'll cut the audio down. All right, so this, like I was saying, this metal's a lot thicker. So we're actually gonna have to stud gun this. It's not coming out. And what we wanna do is actually prep the surface for the stud gun. So stay tuned and I'll be right back. All right, so back to the panel, and we got our grinder, and all we're gonna do is make sure we get all this paint off, because you do have to have bare metal to actually put the studs in here. So we're just gonna take the grinder real quick. All right, so now that we've got our panel cleaned, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna put some studs on this, but I'm gonna let it cool off for a minute, because that grinder does get it warm for a second, but it's not like, you wanna make sure you can put your hand on it. Let's just put it that way. It's not too bad, but what we're actually gonna do is get a couple studs out, because we're going to put a couple studs in this thing because it's a very large dent. So I'm going to pull it in sections, and I don't know if y'all can really tell, but there's actually like a line right here in the metal, and what that is from whatever it hit, it hit it right there in the middle, and that caused the whole metal to concave on top of itself. So we're actually going to run studs from here all the way down, and then we're going to start pulling it. This thing does throw sparks, so I always put my safety glasses on, because you really do not want one to land in your eye. Like I was saying, be very careful with that, because that thing is scalding hot. It will literally burn the skin off your finger. gonna put one more right here next to it because I got a smaller dent. And pretty much all you'll do with this is we're actually going to start in the center somewhere and kind of work our way up and down. So I guess I'll start on this one right here because this is about the deepest point. And what you'll do is that'll locks on like that. And you can actually sometimes just pull on these. This one's not moving though. So we're going to put a little pressure on it. We're going to move up to the next one. And you're definitely not going to be gentle with this. This metal is a lot thicker, so on your newer cars you can kind of work the metal a lot easier. It's actually coming out pretty good. I see a couple other spots we're going to have to and don't really worry about pulling the metal out too far because I mean you're going to hammer it back down. You just want to make sure your body is not behind this because I have hit myself with this. Pull this little one right here. So what we're actually going to do is, because we've got a high ridge right here from where the dent hit, it actually caused a, what I call like a mountain. We're going to see if we can't work it out some. So what you'll do is you'll just put your stud puller on there, pull on it, and all you're doing is just trying to get that ridge to relax down. I like to give it a little tug just for safety. You got a little bit of a so we're still low in the center right there. I gotta grab something, hang on. All right, so you can actually reuse a lot of these studs. So what I like to use is a pair of just wire cutters, and you just grab it from the end and give it a little bit of twist, and the stud comes off. You can use these studs a couple times, and you can also bend the metal like this too. So you can actually pull up on it. It don't really work that great, but I have seen some guys do that. Sometimes they get welded on there pretty good and they'll leave a little bit of a, yeah, see that one's gonna leave a stud. We'll have to grind that off later. They get welded on there pretty good sometimes. That one come off pretty good. And on some of your thinner metal, it will actually put holes in it. And all you'll do is, if it puts holes in it, you'll have to spot weld it up, just so you don't get what they call worms on the backside. So we've got this thing pretty good. I'm gonna pull some more down here and some up in the middle here, and close the gaps in. You can reuse them, but I got a whole jar, so I really don't see no point in reusing them because they do get kind of worn out after so long. just slowly working this dent out. I'm gonna try to put one up here and see if I can't pull this out some. 'Cause that one's got kind of a dent up here. That's what I was talking about. You need to watch yourself being behind this. I've had one of these slide off and hit me where you don't want to be hit. It also does help if the fender's tied down a little bit better. This fender's still kind of loose. That one's not going to take much. Hopefully you guys can really see how the metal's moving when I'm pulling on it. Oh yeah, that spot's way better. We're still working on this one. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some pressure on this and hammer out here because I have a little bit of a crown. And guys, it is tearing up hot today. But I got a little bit of a crown right here. And I will tell you this, that it will take you some practice doing something like this. This is not something that anybody can pick up and do. I'm kind of picky when it comes to how straight my metal is. A lot of people, they'll pull it out like this. And I mean, to be honest, you probably could get away with this, but I'm a little picky, so I'm not gonna let this fly. So I'm gonna put some studs in between here and kind of just bounce around and pull this dent completely out. That way, my mud wipe, when I wipe this with mud, is very, very thin. So we're gonna put some pressure right here. And you don't have to put a lot of pressure. I mean, I just pull on it. Just be careful if the thing slides off that you don't lose your little bit of a smack for good measures. Same thing on this side. Smack for good measures. And we're going to re-stud. And Now I will show y'all a little bit of a trick you can use with a This is a little trick you can use with a square that kind of gives you an idea of how flat your surface is. So let me raise the camera up. So this is a little bit of a tool you can use. You can actually use a flat square, and you can see how it opens up right there. Opens up a little bit more, and a lot more. So we got a long ways to go, and this is where it takes the longest, is just trying to pull this out, especially on these body lines. It is hard to pull these things out on body lines. All right, so we're gonna do a little bit of hammering and dollying on this to see if we can't get some more of this out, because the stud gun's not really helping me any. Kind of gives you an idea of where some of the low spots are, and you can come back and actually hammer and dolly on this some more, but realistically some of these low spots are actually not that bad. You know, your mud's not going to be probably no thicker than a fingernail, like I said before. I might try to come back and hammer and dolly this some more later on, but that's pretty much from start to finish on how you fix one of these dents the proper way. And you could do some more grinding on this because this metal is a lot thicker, so you can actually metal finish this out and get rid of a lot of these dimples. And that's probably what I'll end up doing, is actually using like a surface grinder, because both of these are not really abrasive, even though that is 80 grit, and I don't know what the grinder is exactly, but we get a lot of these out with a grinder just because of how thick this metal is. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you could do a little bit more hammer and dolly on it, but it really don't get no smoother than that. All right, guys, so that's gonna be a wrap for part 2 of the Mustang. I hope y'all enjoyed it. It was definitely fun showing y'all this. And if y'all have any more questions about things on the car, you know, what we're gonna do about something or something like that that you see in the video, please don't be afraid to comment. We love comments. Or questions or anything you really want to do. So for right now, we're going to be pretty much done, and on a later date what we'll do is we'll actually come back and we'll start talking about, you know, lining panels up and stuff like that, because that is a big part of fixing these fenders and fixing everything else, is lining everything up, so when it is time to paint, you don't have to worry about, you know, scratching or nicking something. So guys, Like always, I appreciate y'all stopping by, and please hit the subscribe button if you ain't already subscribed, and if you want notifications, please hit the notification bell. We much appreciate it. The channel's doing fantastic, and we've got a lot of big news coming up, and I'm really excited to tell y'all about it. So guys, till next time, we'll see you later.